Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
Financial Survival Network is presented to you by Regal Assets. Buy and sell physical gold and silver through your existing retirement plan, 100% tax-free with Regal Assets. If you want to include physical gold or silver in your existing IRA or old 401k, request your free investment kit, which was recently featured in the Forbes and Smart Money Wall Street Journal magazines. Call toll-free 855-678-6620, 855-678-6620, or visit regalassets.com. So, we get through LibraGate, and now it's CrudeGate. There's price fixing going on in the energy market, according to ZeroHedge.com. I'm shocked. My guest, Turd Ferguson, he's really shocked because he believed in truth, justice, and the American way, free markets, and everybody being free to perceive to go after their own legal and legitimate goals. Aren't you shocked, Turd, aren't you?
Yes, truth, justice, and the American way till somebody tugged on my cape. Yeah, it is. It's not, nothing about that surprises me. And I think anybody that is an active market follower has noticed it's been really ramped up just since the financial crisis of 2008. But there isn't really a free market left anywhere on the planet. I mean, should come surprise as no one that the energy markets might be manipulated. The metals markets are manipulated when the equity markets clearly are. The currency markets, the biggest markets in the world, clearly are manipulated. The U.S. bond market is manipulated. That's essentially what quantitative easing is. And so the fact that all of that would extend into something smaller like crude or something much, much smaller like gold and silver shouldn't surprise anybody.
Yeah, if you can manipulate trillion-dollar markets daily, which the currency markets are, and multi-hundred-billion-dollar markets, which the oil markets are, what's a little market like silver or gold that's a few $billion a day? Easy to manipulate that, but how long can they go on manipulating until one day they actually have to pay the piper?
That's exactly right, Kerry. I think about the best analogy I could use is, I mean, anybody can go on Google and look up history of price control events and then look at how that never works and look at the spectacular fireworks show that always results when those events end. Because by trying to manipulate the natural laws of supply and demand and how that affects the price dynamics, eventually it all falls apart on you. I look at when they attempted price control in New York City for apartments.
Yeah, they're still doing it, Turd.
Yeah.
They're still doing it. It's still disrupting the market, and you still can't find a damn apartment except in the so-called free market. So
exactly.
How's that working out for you, huh?
Or look at, you go back to the 70s when Nixon and Ford tried to institute wage and price controls. Anytime man tries to fundamentally disrupt the laws of supply and demand, it blows up in his face. And the same thing's going to happen in gold and silver. I know, I guess to some people, maybe it sounds like a broken record because we've been preaching for now several years that the supply demand dynamics of physical metal will ultimately end this. Clearly it hasn't happened yet. We're still seeing, even here just this morning, the overt manipulation in driving, pushing around the paper price. But it is that physical demand that will ultimately end it. And with the reinitiation of quantitative easing, and this time open-ended, and what appears to be infinite quantitative easing, the holders of dollars worldwide, the creditor nations, are only increasing their transfer from fiat currency into hard assets, and that's going to continue to underpin gold and silver, and prices are going to keep headed higher.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question of that. It's just amazing that the whole rig job that all the markets are is becoming more and more apparent by the day, and this latest revelation, which isn't really much of a revelation when you get down to it, is just more of the same.
Yeah, just throw another log on the fire. Yeah, and you know, I don't know, Carrie. I don't have the stats in front of me, but you know, we see stories from time to time about all of the outflows from regular investors out of stocks. You know, we see stories that 80% of the volume on the New York Stock Exchange is just simply computers, high frequency trading computers, just swapping stocks back and forth to each other. The exchanges don't mind. They're for-profit organizations that make a little tiny bit of money every time there's a trade. So they think it's great, but there's no real price discovery anymore. There's no real efficient allocation of capital. It's all just this manipulated, false. There's nothing tangible and fundamental to it anymore. All kind of an illusion created to give you this false sense of security that all is well when it's not.
Hey, and just for those of you out there who don't know what price discovery is, how would you define that, Turd?
Well, I mean, at its most basic level, it's the price at which someone is willing to buy something, and that meets the point at which someone is willing to sell something. I mean, that's at its most basic level. But it involves some rational action between two rational actors. And instead, what we're getting is a false sense of demand, whether it's through infinitely created fiat money just sloshing around looking for a home, or whether it's from a couple of computers playing a large game of greater fool theory, which is where the greater fool theory, if anybody doesn't know what that is, that's the idea of I'm going to buy something in the hope that I can sell it to some greater fool at a higher price. and that's what the computers do. That's, they buy something at 35 and 10 cents, hoping to unload it to another computer at 35 and 11 cents.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yes.
It's totally crazy. Do you think that they're actively rigging the market for baseball and football players and basketball players? Because, hey, if they're willing to rig every other market, if they see a benefit to rigging those markets, they'll do that too, won't they?
Well, I suppose they got to draw the line someplace. I think at this point, I would draw the line where, Bernanke is on the record and has written several papers and has spoken for quite literally decades that he is a big believer in what is called the wealth effect. That if you can convince people that they're wealthy and that things are going well, that it becomes this kind of self-fulfilling virtuous cycle. That they say, oh, okay, well, look at my 401k statement that just came. I think I'll go buy a new washer and dryer. And so in the absence of any real fundamental growth, the Fed just pushes money into the system, encourages the banks, tries to encourage the banks to lend, buys up S&P futures through their primary dealer banks to create this wealth effect, to get people to feel as if things are going well, regardless of whether in fact they actually are. But if you can convince people that things are going well, then maybe again the society or the economy will inch forward. And that's what they're trying to do.
Well, now you're getting into a whole question of what is reality. Without knowing it, you've hit upon a profound issue. It's not just how much this stuff cost us and will it fail and all that. Is there an independent reality which we perceive, or is it strictly relativistic? So if we believe happy days are here again, then happy days are here again. And if we don't believe it, then they're not here. And the Fed seems to believe that there's no independent economic reality, that reality is what you perceive it to be. So if you think the economy is good, you spend. And if you think the economy is bad, you don't spend. And this is flying in the face of reality, and this cannot work out.
And Carrie, just to expand on that, because it's a very important point, you can suspend reality for a short period of time.
Yeah, I think it's called drugs, right?
And we're seeing it currently play out in gold and silver, even here this morning, in that there are so many people on a short-term basis that look at some of the internal dynamics of that market, the large short position that's built up in the banks, for example, and say, you know what, gold and silver are going to go down. And if enough people begin to believe that, it does become self-fulfilling. There's an element of technical analysis that's like that. If everybody's looking at the same price point to sell or to buy, it becomes self-fulfilling. The same thing can be true in the very short term for Bernanke's wealth effect. Yeah, oh, hey, look at my statement. I'm feeling good. In the end, though, the actual laws of supply and demand, the fundamentals, eventually take over. They always do. As we relate this back to gold and silver, the unceasing demand for physical metal that is coming from creditor nations, from the Chinese, from the Russians, from the Indians, as they swap their dollar reserves for hard assets, that unending physical demand will eventually trump all of the paper price illusions that are attempted to be manipulated by the banks and the Fed. And price will eventually, again, still go higher. And everything else, whether it's the crude oil market, the bond market, the currency markets, the stock market, everything else will eventually correct back to earth as well.
Yeah, and we are talking about the illusion, and he's the grand wizard that somehow is going to make everybody believe that everything's okay. But in the final analysis, wealth doesn't get created from perception. It gets created from investment, from savings, from saving your surplus so that you can invest it and earn a return. And if that isn't taking place, regardless what the grand wizard says, the society is getting poorer, not wealthier.
Yeah, take it to its logical extreme. If this allegedly works, then you should be able to push it as far as you can. It's like the minimum wage.
Yeah, I just was thinking that too.
Yeah, why not? Why is $8 the minimum wage? Why not make it $80?
100, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're building wealth. It's great.
Right. Exactly. So why not, if you're going to print money, if that's the key to success, then why not just issue a bank credit to every single U.S. citizen for $1 million?
Hey, wait, right? That's Obama's campaign platform. He's going to make everyone a millionaire. Did you catch that? That's his latest way to buy votes.
There you go.
It's a reductio ad absurdum, like I think we used to say in logic, but it illustrates that wealth doesn't get created in a printing press. It gets created out in the real world where you create goods and services that you sell to other people, that you earn a profit on, that those people who are buying them are profiting by it, and society and civilization is the wealthier for it. But when Ben Bernanke hits a button and more currency units pop out, that really doesn't help anything because the same amount of goods and services are still present. He hasn't created any wealth.
Yes. And that's why, Kerry, it's critical at this time that people think for themselves, that they don't just accept spoon-fed the noise that comes out of the Fed, the banks, and their accomplices in the mainstream media. You have to think for yourself. If you sense, like I do, and probably like you do, Kerry, and if the listener senses that this isn't right, that I know, then you have to take action. The best protection for your wealth and your retirement and your savings is money that can't be debased. The traditional money, which is physical gold and physical silver. And you have to be able to, it takes courage to stick your neck out and say, put your stake in the ground and say, I believe this. I trust my own instincts. But that's the most important thing that people can do right now, rather than just kind of go along with the herd.
Yeah. And the herd is going to run off the cliff.
Yep.
And they're going to be left penniless, or certainly they'll be selling the family silver. That'll be the only way that they're able to eat, and popping off those rings. I read someplace, I think it was Argentina, that one of the best means of barter, of getting food and buying necessaries there, people were actually dealing in gold rings, not like heavy gold rings that weigh half an ounce, but rings that weigh a few grams of gold. And everybody had a scale and an acid test to figure out what they were worth. And they became effectively a currency, gold rings.
It's not surprising, is it? It always tends to eventually go back to something like that, some type of sound money. And Kerry, this one more thing I would add, there was a book written a couple of years ago. I forget the author's name, but it was called The Survivors Club. Have you heard of this?
No,
Do
I
you know this
haven't.
book?
I want to check it out.
Might be an interesting guy for you to talk to. This author studied plane crashes and natural disasters and any type of major event where there were, frankly, mass casualties. And he studied the events where at least a few people survived and then interviewed those people to find out, if they had anything in common. Why did they survive and everybody else perish? And he found that there were two specific reasons, but the one that really pertains to this conversation is all of the survivors had a plan. They
Exactly.
had in entering that situation, in getting on that plane, or in just simply looking around themselves on a daily basis, they thought about what could happen, what might happen, and had a plan so that when everybody else was panicking, at their own peril, these folks had already thought through the situation and were ready to act, not just simply react. And they then survived. And so that's, I think, good advice for everyone in the current world that we live in. That's for sure.
That's a great parable because I always tell my kids, because they go to these crowded nightclubs in New York, which don't have adequate fire exits. They really
Yeah.
should be shut down. And I say, when you walk into any public place, you figure out if it hits the fan, how the hell you're getting out of there. Do that first before you do anything. And you always hear these stories about people panicking in a club or something. They run for the exits. They can't get out. There's a pile up. And then the people who are calm, cool, and collected just basically walk around the bodies and escape. And we're dealing with the same kind of thing here. You have to have an emergency economic exit plan.
Yep.
And that is called gold and silver. That is called not extreme prepping and not piling up the ammo, although that's a fun thing to do anyway. But it really comes down to your emergency economic exit plan, how you exit the mayhem and the chaos that potentially will result, even if society manages to hold together and we don't all take to the streets and have blood running. You need to be thinking about that. And I think, Turd, if it's one good thing that we've hit upon in this conversation, you made the great point. I am going to buy that book, The Survivors Club. I hope it's on audiobook so I can listen to it because I just don't have time to read anymore. But that is a great point, and I think it's something that you can really profit from. Just have a plan. Even if the plan isn't going to work, at least you're thinking about acting and not panicking. And that's the key to getting out of any disaster, be it physical or economic. Think and then act.
And as it relates to your finances, if you sense that this is all BS, manipulated, and the market is at all-time highs while the economy is not, then you begin to liquidate and move into cash now rather than in the middle of the next flash crash, or you move into the metals now before the world wakes up and realizes that there isn't near the metal that's been committed and reallocated all 10 times over, and price is now $10,000 an ounce. You have to think, act, and prepare ahead of everybody else if you're going to survive.
You're absolutely correct. And then you can help the people that you can help. You'll be in a position to actually help people, which is what you and I, this is why we do what we do. And not that I believe that you need to live your life for everybody else but yourself. I don't think that's healthy at all. But you do need to help everybody that you can without hurting yourself.
That's right.
So on that note, Turd, your website?
Two places you can find Turd on a daily basis. TF for Turd Ferguson, tfmetalsreport.com. That is the free site with a rather large online community that's all kind of dedicated to helping each other. That's no doubt about that. Also have a subscription site where I post a podcast with regular guests every day, about a 15, 20-minute listen. That's Turd Talks Metals, all one word. And it's very, I think, affordable and informative at the same time. So thank you.
Hey, we appreciate you being on here. If you missed any part of this interview, go over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com, replay it, Turd's one of our most popular guests. A lot of wisdom there, man. Even though your name is interesting, the wisdom that comes out is really great, and we can't thank you enough for being on here.
Kerry, my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.